These incidents happened around 1984 or 1985 in Baltimore, Maryland. I was in my early 20s and on my way to meet a shuttle bus that would take me to my job in Washington, D.C. It was around 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I was driving down Windsor Mill Road, going towards Woodland, Maryland. As you drive down that hilly road, it kind of feels creepy because you pass an old graveyard that sits across the street from a small patch of old, single-family homes. As I drove, I looked over at one house in particular, and I saw a young girl. She appeared to be about 10 years of age. She was extremely pale, and her hair was long and bright red. She was alone, sitting on the steps. What really stood out, though, was the way she was dressed. She wore a long old-fashioned dress and black granny-style boots that buttoned up. The clothes looked like something people would have worn in the 1800s. She just kind of sat there, with no expression on her face, staring across the street at the graveyard. I was really puzzled seeing her. First, because of the clothes she was wearing, and second, because it was extremely hot that day. We were experiencing a heat wave. It was at least 85 to 90 degrees. I figured she was just a kid playing dress up, and maybe her parents weren't aware that she was outside in the oppressive heat, dressed in those heavy clothes. I went on to work and didn't think any more about it. I took the same route every day and didn't see her again until about 3 to 4 months later. I was driving down that same road, and when I came upon that house, I noticed a group of kids in front of the house, playing a very lively game of tag, laughing and chasing each other. I looked closely, and there was the Redhead Girl, running along, as if she were playing with them. I say as if, because it seemed like the other kids were not playing with her. It looked like they didn't know she was even there. There was no direct interaction between her and the other kids. The kids would run one way, and she would run too, but not with them. She looked like she was playing by herself. I can't explain it any other way. It was just weird. She wore the same old-fashioned clothes that she had on the first time I saw her. I honestly thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A year passed. I changed jobs and forgot about the sightings until one day I was having a discussion about the paranormal with my mother. She was born in the South and had experienced her fair share of paranormal sightings. I began to tell her about my sighting, and she quickly interrupted me and described what the girl looked like and what she was wearing. She told me that she had seen the girl before and assured me that my eyes were not playing tricks on me. That is because I had indeed seen a ghost. I've driven down that road several times since then, but I've never seen the red-haired girl again. I've spent most of my life growing up in Hartsdale, New York, a block away from the Ferncliff Cemetery, directly behind the old cemetery flower shop. When I was younger, and our family first moved into the house, my mother would yell at my father, blaming him for leaving the door to the basement open, claiming that my sister and I could easily fall down the stairs and hurt ourselves. My father would always deny it was him who was opening the door. It couldn't have been my sister and I, because the bolt to keep the door closed was too high for us to reach at that age. My father wanted to test if it could be someone else. My mother, my father, sister, and I all went into the guest room to watch a movie one night, around the times of the door constantly being opened. Before the movie started, My father went downstairs to check and make sure the door was closed, and the bolt was locked. Halfway through the movie, he went downstairs and realized that the bolt was undone and the door was wide open. My mother had to have priests come over one day and do whatever it is they do when there are signs of a ghost in a house. Clearly, it didn't work, or maybe there's different spirits because that instance isn't the only time. One day, around the time we were about to remodel the kitchen, I walked into the house and my mother was looking at me like she'd seen a ghost. That's because she actually saw this white form of a little girl running up the stairs and into my bedroom. Often, I've come home and heard voices or whispers. I would yell out that I'm home to inform whoever, thinking my mother or someone else was home, that I'd come back from school. I would then go around the house and realize no one was there. At first, I would think there were thieves who broke in and hid. Eventually, I realized this was a common occurrence and did not want to be home alone by myself because of this. My mother has heard voices too. When I moved away for a while to live in New Jersey, I would get frantic phone calls from my mother to come home to visit her because she would constantly hear voices and objects would move on their own. One night, the most terrified I ever heard my mother. She said she did not get any sleep because she kept hearing things, objects moving about, and then the wireless doorbell she had recently installed went off at around 2 or 3 a.m. She went as far as to take the batteries out, but the bell continued ringing for a good half an hour or so. I believe she said her bed was shaking too before any of this happened. Books had flown off the shelves and across the room in my sister's bedroom. This has happened on several occasions. I also recall as a child my toys moving on their own and me just telling myself that it was all my imagination because I couldn't believe what I was seeing, resulting in me just hiding under my covers until sunrise. Finally, I know this is probably just a weird coincidence, but the day my old refrigerator died was ironically the same day the elderly grandmother of the previous owners died. She was very fond of that old fridge and was very upset that the family didn't take it with them to the next house they moved off to. I just considered it an odd occurrence, but whatever. The dang thing was as old as time, so I was surprised it even lasted as long as it did. Oh, and while we're on the subject of the paranormal, the Ferncliff Cemetery. Never had a problem with it until one night I was walking through. My friends and I would always cut through the cemetery to get to one another's houses, because it was safer than walking on the main and busy streets. Usually, we would go in packs, or if alone, during the daytime. I don't anymore because, well, besides the fact I can drive now, one night, when the moon was full and you could clearly see that no one was around, except for the field of graves, I constantly heard voices whispering. I would constantly look around, thinking maybe it was some teenagers drinking. That's what kids used to do in town, drink in the cemetery, but no one was anywhere in sight. I know my house in this town and area near the cemetery is not the only one that has or is still being haunted. On the other side of the cemetery, in White Plains, there is another house near where my mom's friend lives. The mother thought the son was making up an imaginary friend that he would talk to, until one day she saw for herself an apparition of an elderly man. He rose up from the ground of the room she has her washer and dryer in, and then he vanished. My name's Patrick, and I submitted a story to the site about 5 or 6 years ago of some things that happened to me back when I was in college, but I wanted to submit a more recent story of mine as well. About 3 years ago, I purchased the house I live in now, which is a 1940s Cape Cod in a suburb of Pittsburgh. The land upon which my neighborhood sits is the site of the post-revolutionary military installation known as Legionville, which is where General Mad Anthony Wayne trained the first peacetime U.S. Army. The first night I slept in my house, I woke up about 3 or 4 a.m. with the light next to my bed turned on. Now, I'm a light sleeper and need total dark to fall asleep. I figured I must have turned the light on in my sleep, so I turned it off and went back to sleep. The next night, I woke up again at 3 or 4 a.m. and the same light was turned on. I was a little weirded out with this occurrence, but shut the light off and went back to sleep. The next night I made sure I was going to sleep with the light off, moved the light all the way to the other side of the nightstand, and slept all the way on the opposite side of my queen-size bed. Sure enough, at 3 or 4 a.m., I woke up and the light was on. What weirded me out more than the experiences of waking up with the light on is the fact that it completely stopped after I confronted it. Fast forward about 3 months. I have a career which allows me to work from my office at home for much of the time. I was in the second bedroom, which I converted to my office, doing some paperwork around 3 p.m. I heard a door downstairs open and could sense that someone was in the house. I figured it was my parents, who have a habit of letting themselves in on unannounced visits. I called down, "I'm up here," to them, but received no response. I went to the top of the steps and yelled down, "Hello," and nobody answered. At that point, I heard the door to my kitchen slam shut, and loud, heavy footsteps run down into my basement. I ran outside of the house and called the police, as I was certain there was an intruder. From the sidewalk across the street, I observed the house while waiting for the cops to arrive. I have a front door, a garage door, and a side door, all of which are visible from the street. Nobody exited the house during this time. 2 police officers showed up and seared my house, but found nobody. The strangest part of this occurrence is that the door I heard slam, which is at the top of my basement steps in my kitchen, was locked. That door locks with a deadbolt. It is the type where you cannot lock it behind you and shut the door. You have to either lock it from the kitchen side or with a key on the basement steps side. I clearly heard the door slam shut and then steps ran down to the basement, but the door was locked from the kitchen side. At that point, I decided to have a priest do a house blessing. For the next few months, nothing that degree would happen. However, I would be in bed late at night, just at the point where I'm about to doze off, and would hear a male and female talking. It's just like when you were a kid and were sent to bed when the adults are still up talking downstairs. I could hear voices back and forth, but could not make out what they were saying. I'd get up out of bed to listen closer, but the voices would stop. I made sure to check to see if I was catching the neighbors talking or left a TV or radio on, but never found an explanation. After those few months, all activity stopped altogether. I never really did figure things out, but as long as it stays quiet, I'm happy. I've had an encounter with an invisible thing, such as what was posted in the first Lowling, Texas post. It was on my great uncle's farms, Uncle Nut. Have no idea why they called him that, out near Elgin, Texas. We were visiting, and I got bored of the grown-up talk, so I went out past the barn, and their dog went with me. We went out about 50 yards from the back of the barn, and we were looking for bugs and such. The dog was fine, I was fine, and all was good. The fields and woods we were in had short grass, and all the trees looked about the same age, and the trunks were maybe a foot around each. The trees were spaced roughly about 10 to 20 feet apart, or more, and you could easily see through and past them without any problems. More trees were behind them about the same distance, but there would be no way a person could move from behind one tree to another without being seen. The dog was fine, I was fine, and all was good. Well, pretty soon, all that changed. I started feeling like something big was up ahead of me in the dark, maybe 100 feet or more. I looked, nothing in sight. Shake it off. Keep bug hunting. Nope, something is there. Can't see it, but something is there. Then, a loud grunt-like noise from ahead of us sounded deep like a bull or buffalo. Still can't see anything, but the hairs standing up on my neck. I move my position to get a better view, and as I do, the dog moves closer to me and let out a low growl, which is answered by another loud grunt, but slowly closer. Now I can hear grass and leaves being crunched, and can definitely tell where the sound is coming from, but still nothing but trees and grass ahead of us. Those trees can't hide a bull and buffalo, and as I look forward, I see some of the grass moving, but there isn't any wind. It's like I'm in a vacuum. I look down at the dog, he looks at me, and whatever is ahead of us comes closer. This time, not a step, but a faster pace. I'm still looking at the dog, and he at me. We hear a gurgly, ugly sounding grunt, and whatever it is coming on strong at a good speed. I look up and see Bart get knocked off the side of a tree and decide I've had enough. I look down to the dog who is already hauling you-know-what back to the barn. I took off and actually got to the barn before the dog did. Neither one of us stopped at the barn, as we both headed straight to the house. Whatever that was in those woods was chasing after us, snorting and stomping as I was running after us. I've been chased by a bull before and vividly remember the sounds associated with that experience, but stopped before it got to the barn. At least I think so. But it still sounded like a bulldozer crashing around out there when I turned back towards the field and woods once I got to the house. It was something. I went in and told my great uncle about what happened, and he got all worried and said, "Oh, we don't go out there," and that's all he said. I later looked, and on the back of the barn was painted this weird symbol, like a pair of glasses, like an infinity sign, but with some other marks as well. Nope, I didn't go out to the field again and press my luck, and the dog spent the rest of my stay under the old house. Hi, my name is Lee, and I'd like to share my recent haunting experiences with you all. I'm Australian, recently moved to Ireland, and during my first week here, I was staying at the Dublin International Hostel. I was staying in a dorm with 9 other women. However, one night, I woke up in the middle of the night, sitting bolt upright. I didn't have any trace of sleepiness, and after looking around for a few seconds, I heard someone whisper Ella in my ear, clear as day. I thought it might have been one of the other women, but looking around, I saw that everyone else was asleep. The next day I asked at the front desk about the history of the hostel, and apparently it used to be an orphanage, go figure right, and a school for the local area, and the good folks at the front desk told me that there has been a fair share of people reporting spooky things. Next, I arrived at my new house, new job working as a nanny. I got to know the children and got to know the story of the family. The father's parents had passed away before the children were born. One day, I came into the room to find the oldest daughter, who is 4, talking away to herself. I asked her what she was doing. She said that she was talking to Granny Teresa at the window. I asked her if she was there right now, and she said that she was gone now, but Granny Teresa knows all about you. You're staying in her room. I got the chills like you wouldn't believe. The parents told me that she often says she's talking to her Granny Teresa. Another time, it was just myself and the baby, she's 2, in the house, and we were just playing away when she stood up, went to the staircase and said, "Hello? Hello?" with a big smile on her face. I asked her who she was talking to, and she just pointed to the top of the staircase and started chattering away in baby to the person at the top of the stairs. At other times, I've heard footsteps on the upper floor when it's just me in the house on the bottom floor, and sometimes in the room I sleep in, it gets unbearably cold. I wonder, who was Ella? Has anyone else stayed at the Dublin International Hostel and had any ghostly visitors? I wonder if the girls are actually talking to their granny, or if they're just pretending to feel close to her. It's still creepy either way. If you don't subscribe to this channel right now, if you aren't subscribed already, you will remain creepy for the entirety of your life, which maybe is a good thing, because then you can send me stories and I can read them, and then the stories will be so good that they'll crap your poopy pants. I was trying so hard not to curse because I didn't want to get demonetized, because I'm controlled by the corporations of YouTube and Google. Yeah. Anyway, guys, no, thank you so much for tuning in again to this wonderful YouTube platform and watching my narrations, my silly narrations. Be sure to obviously comment and let me know how you're feeling, how you like the stories. I thought it was a good eclectic collection of different stories, so you got a lot of variety in here. I personally like the last story a lot. Imaginary friends, that kind of stuff always gets to me, because it's like, can you actually question whether it's a ghost or not? I don't know, but to me, that was very creepy. But yeah, you guys let me know in the comment section below which stories you like the most. Don't forget to share this video as usual, because it really helps my channel a lot to grow, and I want to get to 30k. We're so close to 30k too, even though we've got to get to 26k. But yeah, that I have you know, new merch available. A lot of people say that they, you know, from the purchases they made, they enjoyed it. So if you want to pay respects to the Phantom Wagon, I don't even know why I call it the wagon, but if you want to pay your respects to it, in the description below or down below somewhere on YouTube, you can find the Phantom gift shop, and you can purchase yourself a Phantom shirt, hoodie, cup, whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. Anyway, guys, love you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.